is a place for people. People that need help, and that's all of us at one time or another. We need different kinds of help maybe. GODTEL is not primarily a place to give people a roof over their head and food to eat. GODTEL is a place whereby we can tell people about Jesus Christ. GODTEL is a school. It's my school. It's my wife's school. It's a place whereby we can learn how to minister to people, how to love people, sometimes people that are unlovable. And all the people that cooperate in this effort get to be part of what's going on at GODTEL.
Oh, well, here we are. Wednesday. That means I'm going to Livingston for 3 days. And then Sunday I'll go back to Nacogdoches for 3 days. And then I'll come back by here on Wednesday because Martin won't let me stay here any more than one night. One evening. He can't put up with me any more than that. I don't blame him. I have trouble putting up with myself. I think he should have kept that laugh to himself.
Hey, I scared myself. How do you think I feel?
I don't want to know. We are in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 12. Try and try again. That's the title of tonight's message. Try and try again. Now, if any man build upon this foundation, gold, silver, precious stone, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide which he has built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss. But he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. Know ye not that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple you are. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seem to be wise in this world, let him become a fool, that he may be wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, he takes the wise in their own craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, they are vain. Therefore let no man glory in men, for all things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos, Cephas or the world, or life or death, or things present or things to come, all are yours. And you are Christ, and Christ is God's. Now it's obvious that he's writing to Christians. And I've heard a lot of preachers over the years take this out of context, try to make it sound like you can lose your salvation. The thing is, he's not talking about salvation. He's talking about rewards. Rewards and salvation are two different things. Salvation is a gift. Rewards are something you work for. Some of you know what that means because some of you have a job. All of you should, but some of you do. And if you work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then your boss comes up to you on Friday after you agreed with him to work a certain number of hours for a certain amount of pay, and then he looks at you and says, I have a gift for you. If that was me, I'd look at my boss and go, You see, if he's paying me what we agreed on and I did the work, then that's not a reward. That's my paycheck. I'm sorry, that's not a gift. Yeah, that's why I have a wife. Straighten me out. That's not a gift. That's your reward for the work that you did. Now, if he was a really nice guy, which you don't find too many of these, but he gives you your paycheck and then he hands you, says, I got another check for you, and he gives you an extra $100 because he liked your work or something like that, that is a gift because you didn't earn it. You didn't work for it. He just decided out of the goodness of his heart to shower you with 10,000 pennies. I think that's right. I'm not very good at math, but anyway. Rewards and gifts are two distinctly different things. And I'm amazed that so many preachers can't figure that out. And so they preach that, well, you got to work your way to heaven, and if you don't do this and do this and do this, you're going to die and go to hell. If you don't trust Jesus, you will die and go to hell. But if you're trusting Jesus, you will get into heaven. I didn't say you deserved it, because you don't. And neither do I. Neither does Nancy. All Nancy deserves is to go to Washington and try to straighten out them liars. We don't deserve heaven. It's a gift for those who will choose to trust Jesus. Now we're talking here about rewards. That's totally different, and we need to understand that. Now, if any man build upon this foundation, remember in the last half of the chapter, we talked about there's no other foundation that man can lay except that which is laid, Jesus Christ. And in Psalms 11:3 it said, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? If there's no foundation, you have no salvation. Our salvation is based on the foundation of Christ himself. Unlike when I was growing up, we were Catholic, and so the Pope, the first Pope was Peter. And the foundation of the Catholic Church is Peter. No wonder they're in trouble today. They got the wrong foundation. The foundation is Christ himself. There is no other foundation. Peter was just a little stone in the building, just like we are, only with the years gone by, we're farther to the top. But that doesn't mean we're first, because the Bible says the first shall be last, so actually we're last, even though we're farther along. But that's okay. If any man build on this foundation, gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble. This is a metaphor of two different distinct types of building materials. Gold, silver, and precious stones. Those are harder. Those are things that will last. Wood, hay, stubble, that's stuff you can burn up with a match. And the best illustration I can give you for this is the three little piglets. So why do you call them piglets? Because they were young. It's my story. And the three of them built houses, if you remember. One of them, he built his house out of bricks, and then the other two built one out of sticks and the other one out of straw. And then the big bad wolf, who represents the devil, came by, and he said, I'm going to huff, and I'm going to puff, and I'm going to blow your house down. And he blew the first two down, and so they ran over to their brother's house and had to beg him to get in, because he didn't want to let them in there, because he's afraid they'd drink up his cerveza, and he didn't want that. So, but he finally let them in there. And the old devil comes by and he says, I'm going to huff and puff and blow your house down. And he huffed and he puffed and he huffed and he puffed and he got lightheaded and passed out. You ever huffed and puffed until you got lightheaded? It's a really unique experience. You ought to try it sometime. Only don't try it here. We'll call an ambulance. And so you got these two kinds of building materials. The gold, the silver, and the precious stones represent the spiritual gifts that we use for God's service. Obedience. The other three, the wood, hay, and the stubble, represent bad works. And Jesus said, you shall know them by their fruit, which is what? Their works. You will know them. You will know the Christians by the way they treat one another. Of course, most places I go, if I look around, I can't find anybody acting like they're supposed to. Too busy talking about football and things of great importance. Somebody asked me today, he said, you don't like football? I said, no. I said, as far as I'm concerned, the Dallas Cowboys can go away. As long as we get to keep the Cowgirls, that'll be all right. Every man's work shall be made manifest or exposed, seen. For the day shall declare. The day he's talking about there, of course, is the judgment day. It's going to be revealed by fire. Fire is the purifying agent. Gold, silver, and precious stone can stand fire. Wood, hay, and stubble can't. Now he's talking about Christians here, not lost people. Every man's work shall be tested, or tried means tested, of what sort it is. If any man's work abides, which he has built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If that work can stand the fire, the test of fire. Now, these rewards that we get come in the form of 5 crowns in the Bible. They are not designed so I can get some and then look over at Martin and say, I got 3, you only got 1, ha, ha, ha. What they are is a present that I can earn to have a gift to give to my Lord. That's what the crowns are for. I can stand before Jesus with 1, 2, or 5 crowns and say, Lord, I was obedient. I did this for you. And at that point, that's when Jesus would say something like, well done, thou good and faithful servant. I'm hoping to hear that. You could possibly be in heaven with no reward. That's what it says right here. If any man's work is burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself, this is a Christian, shall be saved, yet so by fire. That means barely made it. But let me tell you a secret. Barely made it is better than not making it. My pastor, Brother George, he always says, I just want to get there. He's 91. I just want to get there. I agree with him. I just want to get there. I'd rather get there with some rewards to give to my Lord to show my appreciation for what he's done for me. But I just as soon get there. That's the main thing, to get there. Now, there's reasons for this. God is fair, and he judges every man according to his work. So if you are one of those people that did a lot of obedience to Christ, you get more reward than somebody else. Those rewards will determine your position in heaven. Personally, I just want to be there. I'll be the garbage collector. I don't care. I just want to get there. By the same token, if you are a person that's going to hell and you're at the great white throne judgment, you will be judged according to your works. And if you have done worse things than other people, you'll get more hell than other people. God is fair. Of course, everybody in hell will still be in hell. Everybody in heaven will still be in heaven. I believe that there's going to be a lot of shamed people in heaven. A lot of people who are really Christians, but they're not doing what God told them to do. I know a man in this town that his daughter a few years ago came to see me and told me that her dad was miserable. Been miserable all his life. Because you see, he and I were called to preach about the same time. And I went into ministry and he didn't. Because he was more concerned about making money and taking care of his family. And it's sad because I put my family second, put Jesus first, and God's taking care of my family. So we haven't lost anything, with the exception of my hair. I keep losing my hair. I don't know where it's going. I can't find it. So it is possible to be saved and not have any reward, just barely get in. A guy told me one time, he says, I'm going to hell, so I'll just do anything I want to do. And I said, I wouldn't do that if I was you. He said, because if you are worse than others, you will be treated worse in hell. God is just, and you need to understand that. God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man sows, that shall he also reap. Galatians chapter 6. If you sow to the flesh, you're going to reap corruption. If you sow to the Spirit, you will reap life everlasting. You are the temple of God. If you're a Christian, you're the temple of God. And the Spirit of God dwells in you. It's not about you getting more of the Spirit. It's about the Spirit getting more of you. The more of you he has, the more obedient you're going to be. God designed us to glorify him. And the only way you can glorify God is by obeying God. People say, I praise you, Lord. Well, the only way you can really praise God is by obeying God. The words don't really mean anything. In verse 17, he says something very interesting. If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. And a lot of people think that means hell. And that's not what it's talking about. He's talking about in this life. Because he's talking to Christians. If you're a Christian, but you refuse to obey God, then you are going to be destroyed in this life. And I've had to preach a lot of funerals. None recently, but I'm hoping. I've seen people die because they smoked. Lung cancer, tongue cancer, throat cancer. One of my friends died of cancer in the throat. And he was only 52 years old. Another fellow that worked for me was 54, and he died of cirrhosis of the liver. These are people that got saved late in life. They became Christians. I have no doubt I'll see them someday. But God destroyed them because they wouldn't obey him. Took them out of this life. They still go to heaven according to this scripture. But I believe there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be standing there looking Jesus in the face, and they're going to be ashamed. And for a time in heaven, there's going to be a lot of tears. Revelations tells us that there's coming a day when God's going to wipe all the tears away and all the sorrow. But that's later, way later. And a lot of people don't recognize it. They think the minute they get to heaven, there won't be any tears. I believe if you have not been obeying God, you're going to be one of the ones crying. You'll be ashamed to stand before Jesus, empty-handed. So understand, if you defile the temple, that means put substances in your body that don't belong there. Like, I don't know how many I counted out there on the smoking deck, I already forgot, but there was a bunch. And some of you, from time to time, do drugs. Some of you do drink. It's your choice. If you want to do those things, it doesn't bother me. But you will pay for it. And you may end up paying for it in this life. And I've met a lot of people that were miserable in this life because they were sick all the time. Sickness happens. And sometimes even people that are doing right get sick. But I've seen a whole lot of people that weren't that got sick. All kinds of things that happens. I remember when we buried Doug Phillips, 26 years old. He stayed sober for 3 years. Just about 3 years. And then he decided to go and drink. And he told me one day, he says, Brother June, I don't believe Jesus is the answer for my drinking problem. I jumped up out of my seat and I said, Doug, God will kill you. He's not going to let you ruin your testimony. He'd been working for the Lord for several years, witnessing to people and doing what he's supposed to be doing. 7 days later, I get a phone call. Remember, he's 26. Brother June, Doug's dead. What happened? Well, he went out and had a couple of beers, went home, got in his bed. You know, when I used to drink before I was a Christian, I used to think getting home was the hardest thing in the world. Sometimes it took me hours to get 20 minutes away. Anyway, Doug laid in his bed, in his own bed, and choked on his vomit and died in the middle of the night because he disobeyed what he knew God wanted him to do, and God took him out. I don't say it's going to happen exactly like that every time. Some people, God just leaves them and lets them stay miserable, like my other friend. All these years, 40-something years, he's miserable. His daughter told me she lives with him, she knows. If you think you're smart, well, I wouldn't do that too much. It says, let no man deceive himself. Any man among you seems to be wise in this world. Become a fool that you may be wise. The difference between God and us is the difference between us and a microbe. God is brilliant, we're stupid. We just think we're smart. I can just see Albert Einstein standing before God on Judgment Day. God, I discovered relativity, and now I'm working on quantum physics. And I came up with the formula to turn energy into mass and mass into energy. And God's going to say, but I made it. Oh, excuse me. You know, there's nothing in this world we can do or accomplish that God hasn't already thought of. Nothing. We try to create because we're created in the image and likeness of God. But we can't create like God does. Just try making a blade of grass that can reproduce another blade of grass. That sounds simple, doesn't it? I think I might have told you about the scientists that were having an argument with God, said they could do anything God could do. And God said, okay, well, let's have a test. And so he said, next Saturday, we're going to have a test, call your friends. And so they all showed up, and they looked at God, and they said, well, you're older than we are, so you go first. God reached down and got some dirt, and he molded and shaped it to a man, and then breathed into him life. And the scientists said, oh, we can do that. And they started to reach for some dirt, and God said, what? Get your own dirt. I mean, we're not very smart. I'm watching and talking with people who are depending on their opinions to get them through after they die. Who in their right mind would want to die hoping that your opinion of that's just amazing to me. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear about this Jesus who is God, who created everything, who wants to save us and get us into heaven. They don't want to hear about that because they have opinions. Have you ever really stopped and thought about your opinions? Because if you ever really do, you're going to figure out that they're worthless. So don't tell me your opinions, please. I get enough of that all the time anyway. My opinions are worthless. I have some, but they're worthless. I got opinions about everything you can imagine because I'm very opinionated. But I've learned to keep my mouth shut a lot because they're worthless. The wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. It's just utter nonsense, foolishness. It's written, he takes the wise in their own craftiness. People think they're really smart and they invent something, and then God uses the same invention to do them in. Over and over. It's like the man who digs a hole in the ground to get his neighbor and then forgets where he put the hole and falls in it himself. People do that. The Lord knows the thoughts of the wise. They are vain, useless. Psalms 94:11. See, I marked it because I wanted to find it again. The Lord knows the thoughts of man, that they are vanity. Vanity is useless. They're useless. Therefore, let no man glory in man. And what do we do in America especially? We take a guy that can throw a football and put him on a pedestal and pay him millions of dollars when in reality, the person who should have got the $1 million was the school teachers that had to put up with him. We don't pay the teachers much. We give it all to the football player or a baseball player or a golfer or a basketball player. We idolize singers, Beyonce. We've made her a billionaire. For what? Because she can sing a song? Because she's cute? Sandra Bullock? She's cute. I've been trying to get a date with Sandra Bullock for about 10 years. My wife just won't let it happen. Sandra Bullock doesn't know who I am. Darn. We idolize the weirdest things. And we glory in stuff that's unimportant. Everything we own is going to be burned up one of these days. You're going to lose it all, and you don't even have much. But if you're getting a government check, that's fixing to stop pretty soon. I was listening to an economics report about how they're engineering inflation. There are these economic guys in our government who believe that we need inflation. And I'm thinking, why can't we just leave everything the same price? Why do we have to have inflation? Well, it's greed. I've lived long enough to see this. When I went to high school, gas was 20 cents a gallon. Now you got to sell your firstborn to get a tank full. Cigarettes were 20 cents. A Coke was a nickel. You go to a restaurant, some restaurants charge you $3 for a Coke. Yeah? And that Coke isn't any better than the Coke we got for a nickel. In fact, I think it doesn't taste as good. Probably because it sticks in your throat because it costs so much. Gold, an ounce of gold, when I was going to high school, sold for $33. Gold, I've seen it as high as $1,700. It goes up and down, of course. But it ain't never going to come back to $33. Loaf of bread, 20 cents. Now it's $1. What's changed? Is bread any better than it was 50 years ago? I'm old. No, the bread's not worth it. It's the money. The money's not worth anything. Right now, our dollar bill in real money is worth about 10 cents. And they're trying to make it worth less than that. And when it gets down far enough, all them government checks are going to stop because the government won't be able to print any more money because it'll be totally worthless. It's already happened in other countries. In Venezuela right now, which used to have a really good economy, it takes like 1,000 of their dollars to make one of ours. I was talking to a guy from Russia the other day. He's staying at our Nacogdoches mission. And he was telling me that it takes 1 point something of the dollars in Russia to make a dollar of ours. So that means their dollar isn't even worth 10 cents. And you wonder why all these countries are at war with one another? It's because real money is worthless, so they have to get resources. And one of the biggest resources, of course, is land. One of these days, China is going to want us to pay up our loans, and we can't do it. And the government comes along and says, oh, the economy is in great shape. Yeah, we're $23 trillion in debt. Any of you got it? You want to pay it back? I sent one time, I wanted to send a donation to our government to put on the national debt. And so I wrote them a letter, and I said, I want to send you, and it was $100 or something like that. I want you to apply it to the national debt. They wrote me back a letter and told me not to send it because they didn't have any way to do that. They don't want to pay off the national debt. The people that are in charge want it to get worse and worse and worse until they own everything. But it's going to backfire on them because China's going to end up owning everything. I can just see in my mind's eye, this is just sanctified imagination, I hope, China bringing their warships off our coast and say, you got one of two choices. We can bomb the heck out of you, or you can accept rule from Beijing. It's going to happen, folks. We've been borrowing so much money. You know, right now I sell a lot of scrap metal. I've made about $500 this week on scrap metal, but I can't sell copper or brass right now. They won't take it at any of the scrap yards because China's not buying it. President Trump, remember, he put that embargo on Chinese goods? Well, they're retaliating, and so I can't sell copper or brass. So I'm stockpiling it because when I do finally get to sell it, the price is going to go way up. I know it. And I'm not a genius. I just know a little bit. Folks, you got to understand, when we glory in men, we end up with men running things who really don't care about us. They don't. I mean, we've been here since 1988, and this mission, 1977, the one in Nacogdoches, and 1983 here, and 1988 in Livingston. How many state senators have visited GODTEL to check on you people in 40 years? None. We did have one call, Phil Graham, when he was a United States Senator. They called me up, his aides called me, and said, Mr. Graham wants to come by GODTEL and have a photo op. And I'm thinking, this man never visited us before, but it was election time. And he wanted to show everybody how compassionate he was, right? So I said, okay, I'll do it. I said, on one condition. They said, what? I said, I want 5 minutes of Mr. Graham's time. They said, what do you want to talk about? I said, balancing the budget. I never heard from them again. They don't want to hear anything about that. He probably found himself some other shelter to take a picture at. I'm not impressed with who's running our country, folks. And if you are, I feel sorry for you because they're going to let you down. We could be in worse shape, though, and we probably will be pretty soon. God knows that the wise people of the world are vain. So don't glory in things. Don't glory in people. Whether it's Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or things present or things to come, all are yours. Now, what does that mean? Well, in Hebrews it tells us that God has given us all things which pertain to life and godliness. So whether the economy goes up or down is unimportant. Whether we live or whether we die is unimportant. Romans chapter 14. Romans 14:8. For whether we live unto the Lord. Whether we die unto the Lord. So whether we live, therefore, or whether we die, we are the Lord's. He's just simply letting us know that everything's going to go to pot but it's okay because he's going to take care of his own people. And he will. There's a guy that's, I call him a friend. He's Jewish. And we've been getting along just great. We talk about the Bible. We talk about different things. He's a gold man in Livingston. He buys and sells gold. And I get all this jewelry and stuff that's donated to GODTEL, so I take it to him. And every once in a while we find some gold and silver in there. And he pays us for it. And he told me one day, he says, June, he says, why don't you save this gold and this silver? Why don't you stockpile it somewhere? I said, why? He says, because that's going to be the money of the future. I said, no, that's not going to be the money of the future. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I read the Bible, and the Bible tells me that there's going to come a day when a piece of bread is going to buy a bag of gold. I'm going to get your gold. So you can have all the gold right now because I'm going to get it back. Because you're going to be hungry. And folks, you cannot eat gold. I've been stockpiling food. Got lots of MREs. Hundreds of cases of them. People call me up and say, Brother June, we got all these MREs. You want? Yeah. And I go get them and I stick them in the room because one day I'm going to take some of those down there and get that gold. Because I know what's going to happen. Billy Graham was asked one time, he said, Billy Graham, why are you so optimistic? He said, I read the last chapter of the book. You know what's going to happen. It tells us what's going to happen. So if you want to please God, I would hope that you would want to please God. The only way you can please Him is obey Him. Trust Jesus, that's where you start for your salvation. And then you read the book and find out what He wants to, it's all right there. And everything you need for life and godliness is right there in this book. And if you will do what this book says, you will have a much better life. And if you don't want to believe that, that's fine. Then keep doing what you're doing that gets you here. Because you are the sum total of what your life has been. Not necessarily a bad thing to be here. Because it means that God still sees that there's potential in you. But you know, you can say no to God long enough and God will let you walk out that door and get rich. And die and end up in hell. What will a man give in exchange for his soul? What good is it to gain the whole world and die in judgment? Won't do you any good. Oh, you'll look cool on your way there. There's a bunch of them out there that look good, don't they? Who are doing really messed up stuff. Don't envy them. They're going to pay for it. Father, we thank you for loving us. I do thank you for each one in the room tonight. And I know, Father, that they are going to be held accountable for what they've heard. You promised your word would not return void. It would accomplish the thing you sent it out to do. And we thank you for that. Everybody in here is making a choice right now. Some of them think it's all foolishness. They just hear because we give them food and shelter. And they don't realize that the food and the shelter is just a means for us to get a hearing. And one day they're going to wake up and either be happy and in heaven, or they're going to be sad for eternity, continually dying in hell, never able to cease to exist. We thank you and we ask you to bless your word in this day in Jesus' name. Amen.